Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach.
And my name is Garfield Martin, or the Uncle Junior, and I go by the Consistency Coach.
And we are the coaches of Coach's Corner. Listen, as always, it's wonderful to be able to share in conversation with my brother, the Uncle Junior himself. And as always, it's wonderful to be able to share in conversation with the livest panel that's out there, the livest chat that's out there. So again, I want to make sure that we welcome everybody to this evening's conversation. However, if you came here just to listen to information and then you have no desire to do anything with the information that you listen to, this may not be the place for you. But if you have a desire to make changes within yourself and to try to be an impact to not just your family, but the community, then I believe that you're in the right place. So before we get too far along the path of this conversation, the Uncle Junior, the Consistency Coach, how are you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm doing good, man. I had me a nice little nap, unexpectedly a nap, a forced nap, or I guess my body was like, "Look, bro, you're gonna chill," So, but I'm live, I'm awake, had a good day, and I'm ready to get into this conversation, and before we do, on Friday nights, one of the things that you say is the disclaimer, and you say that everybody on the show you say they're an expert at their own. What did you say? Expert at their own.
We are a subject matter expert of our own perspective.
Our own perspective. So I just wanted to make that clear today, that because we are talking about communication and we're talking about relationships. So especially when it comes to relationships, a lot of people have different views on what a successful relationship look like, what goes into a relationship, the communication piece, all of those different things, and then, if communication is not effective, it can essentially be the end of a relationship. Now we're going to be talking about all different types of relationships. Relationships are different, but at the end of the day, a relationship is a relationship. So in a lot of the rules that apply in one relationship overlap and can be applicable to other types of relationships. So whether it's relationship with my wife, with my kids, with my dog, with you, with the other members on Friday night on the panel. How we communicate is going to directly dictate the extent of the relationship.
Absolutely.
So, before we get too deep, is there anything that you would like to talk about when it comes to relationships, just in general? It don't have to be anything specific. It don't have to be about the topic, but just when you hear the word relationships and or communication, what do you think about?
Well, first thing first, it kind of takes me back to a previous conversation we had, and that is me appreciating relationships, right? I think too many times we exist in the space of entitlement and expectation, and we miss the mark about appreciation. So I'm extremely appreciative of every relationship that I have, whether it is successful or whether that relationship failed. If the relationship failed and we are no longer in communication, I appreciate the fact that I had that relationship, and I appreciate the ideas and the things that I learned about me from that relationship. And I think if we can find a way to be more appreciative and less demanding, I think you'll find a lot more successful relationships. But I think we're probably going to get into that as we get along the lines of this conversation. So I don't want to say too much, but thank you for giving me that, just giving me that second to kind of put that out there, because I want, as we get started, I want everybody to take what they know about relationships right now and kind of lift up the foundation and lay a new coat of foundation up under that. And it's called appreciation.
I like that. I don't think that I've ever heard those two words used together um that often, or that I can really recall. When we talk about when we talking about relationships, in most cases it starts with me wanting to be fulfilled or feel a certain type of way in the relationship. A lot of times it's about me. It's about
Right.
my comfort level, how the relationship is benefiting me, how this person is treating me. But I think that's a very good point when you just talk about the relationship in general and just being appreciative of the relationship, especially if it's a relationship that you value or it's a relationship that you want to succeed, you
Yeah.
know. And I think that that was a really good point just to start with talking about the appreciation of the relationship, because at the end of the day, you know, in a relationship that we want to succeed, we have to have a certain level of appreciation about it. You know
Yep.
what I mean? And I think it is one of those things that is very much often overlooked. I don't, you know, how many times do we say, you know what? I thank you for, I'm appreciative of this relationship. I thank you for being my friend. I thank you for picking up the phone when I call, you know? So like it's being appreciative of relationships. You know, I like when you said adding that extra layer, um, excuse me, to the foundation. So definitely appreciate you for that.
Yeah. And I think it only makes sense because a lot of times we go into relationships and there's a lot of negativity that exists within us. Like, think about it. Most of us, you look at CNN in the morning, you look at the Weather Channel, you look at some other news network, social media got a lot of gossip going on and things of that nature. So, what ends up happening is that you are laden with a negativity bias. And so, a negativity bias being the precursor that you go into a relationship with, what ends up happening is that I become suspicious of everything you do. So if what you do don't line up with what it is I'm thinking, then that can be based upon a negativity bias. However, if there's evidence to support my observation, that's something totally different. But if you did absolutely nothing, then I will go into it with a negativity bias. So now when we back up and let me focus and work on me, and I'm working on me, and one of the things that I'm working on is being more appreciative. So now, under the notion of being appreciative, it changes me from a negativity bias to being more positive. So I'm looking for the best option in every situation. I'm looking for the silver lining whenever things go bad. I'm expecting, like, I think the best of people, even though sometimes people don't show you the best. So now, through the lens of appreciation, I now have the opportunity to like think positively about my relationship. So instead of me looking to be served, I now look to serve. I now look to be value in the relationship because I am looking through the lens of appreciation. I value the relationship. And of course, because I value the relationship, I value all parties that's in this relationship.
Okay. Okay. I was putting it together. I was putting it together. I get that. And I was thinking about just relationships in general, you know, some of the things that you're saying. It's like, well, with all of that, in order for me, you know, not to be appreciative, but in order for me to know some of the things that I need to be in a relationship or to better serve someone, some of these information needs to be communicated. So
Yep.
we're talking about communication today too. So with relationships, you know, we have to communicate, right? So, and the extent of the communication and the effectiveness of the communication can, like I said, dictate the outcome of the relationships. So, we're going to start off with the first question being, how do you believe effective communication impacts the quality of relationships in both personal and or professional settings? So you can stick to the personal, stick to professional, or you can mix and match.
I think it's one and the same for personal and professional. I think effective communication reveals the quality of the relationship. And that kind of goes back to what I was just saying. In a relationship, I don't look to be served, I look to serve. So one of the things that we understand becomes that is important when it comes down to effective communication is the quality of me listening to what you're saying. So because I value all parties in the relationship, I actually focus on active listening. And so as I am listening to what you're saying, I'm not only listening to your words, but I'm listening to your tonality. I'm looking at your body language. I'm looking at some of the emotional revealers that take place during our communication, because I want to understand. Therefore, in the midst of that, I'm now asking questions because questions help me to find clarity in what it is that you're saying. All of this, by the way, is a part of effective communication. I'm listening to understand, not to respond. I am holding the space for understanding to happen, even though I may be confused about something that you bring to the table that you're troubled with, right? And all of that is done, like I said before, through the lens of appreciation. I appreciate this relationship. Therefore, I have patience in the relationship to allow understanding to come about. So now I'm asking questions. I'm inquisitive. If you're hurting now, I can exercise empathy and so forth and so on. And again, all of it reveals the quality of the relationship. Not just revealing, but the more I can exercise effective communication, better yet, the more we both exercise effective communication with one another, it increases the quality of the relationship. So now we're looking at a relationship that has like depth and breadth to it because we now get into what we tend to call intimacy. So I'm gonna stop right there, bro, because I can go on and on and on about effective communication and relationships. But I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, man, you did. And to my response is, how do I believe effective communication impacts the quality? Is I think it affects it in different ways, and it's really impactful based off of both people's ability to effectively communicate. So like what we're saying is this is assuming that both peoples in the relationship can effectively communicate. What often happens is, or sometimes what happens is, there may be one person who is good at effective communication, or they may be nobody who is good at effective communication. So I think if you got one person who's good, I think you got a chance. But when you got zero people in the relationship that can effectively communicate, I think is you're asking for trouble. But I think that it affects it in that the not the layer, but the type of relationship and what you can and can't do within the relationship is totally going to be impacted by what you communicate, and whether that's effective or not. Because it, I mean, communication can easily be misunderstood, where I can say, just something as simple, I'm gonna get into body language in a minute right after this, but like in certain cultures, if you're a child and you look at an adult, it's considered inappropriate or disrespectful. We're here in the United States, if you don't look at an adult when they're scolding you or talking to you, you're being disrespectful. So understanding cultures is kind of important too. And I know that that's part of what we're gonna get into future in the show. So I ain't gonna step on it or talk about it too much. But one thing that I did want to highlight um before we move on was a couple of different things. I didn't do an extensive research, but I did do a little bit of research and looked a couple of things up. And one of the things that I found out was that there was a bunch of different surveys and a bunch of different data pieces, and talking about how much communication is done verbally and non-verbally. But it seems like the majority of it, whether it was 70% or up to 90%, all of it, majority of it was non-verbal, which means a lot of times it's not what we say, it's everything else. So
Right.
then, we'll move into, okay, well, what does um, here are some of the different non-verbal things, body language and different ways that we communicate. So I found facial expression, gestures, paralinguistics, I guess like inflection of voice, body language, proxemics or personal space,
Hmm.
eye glaze, haptics, appearance, artifacts. So we're like artifacts. I was like, what? Then it's like, oh well, If I show you this, you know exactly what it is.
Right.
So, what do you think? What are your thoughts on anything I said, or the data that I presented, or these types of body languages before we move forward?
I love it because again, we're talking effective communication in relationships. And a
Hmm.
lot of things like we addressed it, and I know when we addressed it in the beginning, we didn't specify what type of relationship. But now I want to kind of be specific to like a leader in an organization when they're talking to like their workers. I don't like using the word subordinate, but they're talking to the team. Let's say it like that. Well, one of the things that we have to be consciously aware of is the nonverbal communications, like you mentioned. So, my facial expression, even though I'm saying the thing, my facial expression can say something totally different. People have told me on several occasions I do not have a poker face. So, I embrace it. I'm working on it though, y'all. But I understand my poker face needs some work. Gestures is key as well because, again, I can start relaying information, but my body language can show that I'm tense. I could be, presenting an image to where it seems like I'm upset, disappointed, whatever the case may be. Paralinguistics, I think, is huge. What is the thought? What is the emotion behind the words that are actually coming forth, which equate to the inflection of my voice? Where does the inflection come from, and what is the reason behind it? So that's why I talk about effective communication through the lens of active listening, because sometimes you don't necessarily know. Like the boss probably just came out of office and just got a chewing. He got chewed up and spit out. And then come around the corner and 38 hot because they just went through that, calibration session is what we tend to call it, right? And then comes out and wants to do the right thing and relay the information to the team, but you're still full of like you're still disappointed and upset. So now that comes through the words that you're sharing with the team. So, when you understand that, then you may need to take a minute, go outside, walk around the building, get some sun, process, digest, and consider what is the spirit behind the words that you just got finished listening to. Don't focus on tonality and things of that nature because sometimes people get upset. But
Hmm.
you have to be the in between. Don't relay the rage that you just came out of. You have to relay the information to such a degree that they understand. So that incorporates all of these things because if we are not aware of what our nonverbal communication is saying, then it seems unauthentic. I can be saying one thing and then displaying something totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. You was talking about your poker face, and at our age, we have had plenty of conversations with people. We've been misunderstood, and we've misunderstood other people. And there's a lot of different reasons why people misunderstand people, and it's okay to be misunderstood. But how do you deal with it if you are misunderstood? Do you have any experiences or anything like that where you were misunderstood in communication, and it led to a significant change in the relationship? And
Hey man,
how did you dissolve it?
which example do you want?
I don't know, but I can think
That's
of
really
one
it.
right off the top of my head. But
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
can uh, I can give you a few of them.
yeah.
I will start with the work situation. I think
Mm,
as a young leader, in the army, when I first became a leader, it was like I'm excited for the mantle of leadership. I'm going to like train the soldiers to be the best, right? But it's one thing to be in a position, but it's another thing to be able to display the behavior that the position mandates. And so when I started sharing information, it was almost like I was in a space of thinking like I need you to do what I tell you to do based upon what I'm thinking that you're supposed to do when I tell you what I need you to do. That's how confusing it sounded in the beginning. And I think a lot of people go through that. A lot of people go through this struggle of trying to relay their thoughts out of their mouth the exact same way that they're thinking about it. Like I know what I'm thinking, but sometimes it just won't come out right. And so in the midst of that, I would give soldiers like some instructions, and they would go off and do a thing, and they come back happy. Hey, 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 we completed the thing. But then when I go and look at it, that's not what I asked you to do. But yeah, that is what you asked us to do. What? No, that's not what I asked. And it was like, again FTX, field training exercise. So we're out there setting up, the sick ups, the shelter, and all kinds of stuff of that nature. And then, of course, back then, I don't know if they still do it now. You got to dig a trench around it just in case it rains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll get out there and they're hard at work and going to town, and we're inside to talk, and of course, leaders in there talking and trying to strategize what we're going to do and things of that nature. And of course, the generator has to be placed out there as well. Well, the generator was placed out there, but the generator wasn't connected. And so it's like, we don't have any power. Well, why you don't have any power? Well, we're running off of track power right now. That's temporary, the vehicle. And when I say track, we're running off of vehicle power, which is temporary right now because those batteries are going to die quick. And so the vehicle power supports what's going on until the generator kicks in. So at this point in time, I'm knowing that the vehicle power is about to die. So I tell the driver, say, hey, go crank the track up so that we can recharge the battery. And what's the status of that generator? They looked at me, they said, generator? I said, yeah, the generator. Oh, what were we supposed to do with the generator? Come on, man. We can't have operations without a generator. So I had to walk them out there and like literally walk them through setting up the generator. Because in my mind, hey, go set it up. We're good to go. That's a complete statement. I know what it means. They just didn't know what it means. So that was on me. That's my failure because I did not articulate clearly what I was thinking in my head to them.
See, for me, I haven't been able to like really locate one because it's like most of the misunderstandings, um, it didn't really lead to a significant change in the relationship.
No.
It was kind of like when there was miscommunication and the relationships ended, I knew that it was more than just the communication anyway. You know what I'm saying? It was the relationship was bad.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but I think like as a, something that a lot of people can relate to is just when people are go behind your back and they say things or you hear something that someone said, right? So me and coach are having a conversation and we're discussing something that happened on the show, right? So I'm like, yeah, me and coach are talking about yada yada yada, and I'm just like, yeah, man, I'm just chatting and yeah, man, I talked to Roland and he's told me this, blah, 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 blah. And then now you go back and you share that information with Roland, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now Roland called me like, bro, were you over here? You heard you saying this, woo up, blah, blah, blah. Now we have a misunderstanding, right? And it's all because the communication is screwed up and people are in other people's business and
Mm-hmm.
sharing misinformation sometimes. And then now it can lead to a significant change in relationships.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times when people are trying to resolve them, I think one of the things that they do is they eventually come back around and someone, whoever the bigger person is at that time, or the mature person will come back around and start having a conversation with somebody to try to get the rest of the information to try to solve it.
Right.
But that is something that I have seen since I was a little kid. I still
Yep.
see it to this day where there's miscommunication because people are talking and sharing information behind people's back.
If I can add to that, because I want to make sure, and this is for me where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
The word relationship carries significant weight in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the person that you and I see eye to eye on what relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see eye to eye on what relationship means, then if we do go through anything significant, you don't destroy the relationship, you actually go through it. If the
Mm-hmm.
relationship was destroyed, it severed the relationship and you never talk to that person again. Well, we weren't in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was in relationship with that person, but they was in relationship with themselves. And so both of us were in relationship with them, but nobody was in relationship with me. So that's why those aren't the conversations to me that lead to significant change, because that just left to a departing of the relationship. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times in those situations, no one changes
Yep.
because they don't go back and reflect on the things that needed to take place. That's why I gave the example that I gave, because in that example, the change took place within me. I realized in that moment that I needed to articulate exactly what I'm saying. Even if sometimes I over articulate it, that's okay. At least no soldier was left trying to figure out exactly what I mean. So that's why I gave the example I gave. When it comes down to relationships that were supposed to happen that failed, it wasn't resolved.
Mm.
You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to share those.
Yeah.
And everybody have them.
Yep.
Everybody have it to where at one point in time you were friends with a person, or you were with a company that you really enjoyed, and whatever that looks like, and then something happened, and it equated to severing the relationship. Well, in both cases, you may have been in a relationship with them, but they may not have been in a relationship with you, or the other way around. They were the one that was in relationship with you, but you were more in relationship with yourself and how they can serve you. And when we have those imbalances of understanding of relationship, then there's not a relationship.
There you go. You heard it right there. I got a bone to pick with you
Uh-oh.
because I remember on the show you said something about um, being direct and being honest with folks,
Hmm.
right? So I ain't got a bone, but I know there's some people out there that have an issue with that. You know
Okay.
what I'm saying? So how do coach or anybody, how do you balance the need for honest communication with the potential to hurt someone's feelings? Because let's be honest, sometimes I'm going to be honest, and sometimes you may not like the feeling that you feel when my honesty comes out. Not being disrespectful, not being rude, just being honest. So, what say you?
Well, I think this is a great question. And I know why you started the way you did. And I chuckled inside when I seen the question, right? Um, Here's why I love that question, because we're talking about two things that aren't on equal playing fields. Let's just be honest. I can tell you right now, so I don't like that yellow shirt. And that doesn't bother you one bit. You're like, I
Not
didn't
one
put it on
bit.
for you. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? That's his posture. And I know it's his posture because that's my posture. I appreciate you sharing with me that you don't like my shirt, but I didn't put it on to please you. I put it on because I like it. I put it
Mm-hmm.
on for me.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times when it comes down to our feelings, we kind of take our feelings and put them in the wrong place. So the feeling go in between you and the other person. My feelings should never stand as a barrier between me and another person. I should have a clear slate between me and that other person, and the feelings should validate the information, not the other way around. We want the feelings to be out front, and then the feelings be the one that articulate the information to us. No, my feelings should never articulate to me the fact that he don't like this, the Georgia Bulldogs. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Because that's okay. I like them. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So my feelings are not in between the communication that you and I have. My feelings are in their proper space. It's behind my thoughts. So when you say it, I can laugh and say, okay, who's your favorite team? North Carolina Tar Heels? Yeah,
Yeah.
man, they can't even hold a candle to Georgia. So now
Yeah.
we're having friendly banter as opposed to having a disagreement. So when we look at this question, how do I balance the need for honest communication? By moving the word need out the way and put requirement. Relationship require me to be honest. If I can't be honest and tell the truth in relationship, remember, trust mandates honesty. So if I cannot recognize that being in the relationship, there's a requirement for me to be honest first with myself, then with you, always in that order. I can't when I do it the other way around, what I'm doing now is projecting honesty on you and hoping that it comes from you to me. But if I recognize that I have a requirement to be honest with myself first, hey man, you kind of get a little emotional about everything. You need to calm down and move your emotions out the way so that you can hear exactly what your boss is telling you. Once
Mm-hmm.
I can hear what my boss is telling me, then I don't get so angry and realize that he got a job to do. So when I do that, now I realize that communication, right, is the gateway to get to the point of having healthy relationships. And the thing that can prevent that gate from swinging open to have that free flowing conversation sometimes is how I feel.
Mm. You said it all right there. Bro, because I mean, like communication, and sometimes people's feelings just get hurt, and like you said, they put the feelings in the front, and sometimes they lead with that. And you know, just if you are not that type of person, I'm just going to speak for those people. It is very frustrating it can be when you are dealing with people, whether you're in a relationship, a personal relationship, or a professional relationship, to whereas every time you try to make a correction or whether you try to be honest, it's always met with this feeling, oh, you hurt my feelings. I mean, even now, the word no can hurt somebody's feelings. Coach say, "Hey man, let me borrow $20," and then I say no. He's like, "Oh man, why you got to be like that?" Like, bruh, I just said no. Why is no offensive to you?
Hmm.
No is an honest communication, but it shouldn't come with the potential to hurt someone's feelings. But the reality of it is, for a lot of people, that no is hurting someone's feelings. So I think part of it is you have to look at the relationship.
Yeah.
What relationship do you have? Is the relationship a relationship, like you said, that you can be honest in? You should be able to, if the relationship is important, you know, and I shouldn't necessarily, I don't want to have to be walking on tiptoes with coach because I'm scared that every single word that come out of my mouth, he's going to be offended by.
Hmm.
Like, that ain't a relationship that anybody wants to be in. So that need for having effective communication back at the other one, and then honest communication in this question is important.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even if you know how someone is, if the relationship is important, sometimes you just have to risk hurting someone's feeling, because the relationship is most important at the end of the day. And even though you may get upset, we have to be honest. And if you can't handle that, that's a you issue. You need to go and figure out why you can't handle this.
Yeah.
That's kind of my 2 cents.
If I can add to what you're saying, because I
Please
love it.
do.
I love it. He's not saying, we're not saying that we can be malicious. That's a whole nother ball of
Not at
wax.
all.
You have to remove all malicious intent, even though you can clearly see that this person was in the wrong, right? As a supervisor, you cannot have malicious intent when you have an employee that's not actually doing their job. You have a
Hmm.
requirement to do your job. That's the answer. There are relationships that are contractual, and there are relationships that we actually make a decision to get in. That's a decision. We made a commitment to one another. Both of them are commitments. The word relationship and commitment are really interchangeable. So when you look at a contractual relationship, it is an agreement that we sign that says, I give you service, you give me money, as long as we are honoring the conditions of the contract that we both sign. And within the scope, under the umbrella of that contract, we can exist in harmony as long as we remember why we're in relationship with one another, and we actually move forward to continue to nurture this relationship for the sake of the contract. Well, when we transition over to the personal side, a verbal commitment is actually contractual. It's not one of those things to where, yeah, I got this document, you said this on this day, and so Alexa printed this out for me because she heard you say it. No, it don't work that way. When I give you my word should be my bond. That's what we mean when we say that. So the word that I share with a person, when I call them friend, so forth and so on, that word is bond. That word is a bond based upon the internal character of me. So now when I don't act friendly, you're starting to question the word that I gave you back here. Well, I can't do this back here and then don't be friendly here. Those are non-congruent with one another. So that's what I'm talking about here. He has a responsibility. The Uncle Junior himself, Garfield Martin, the consistency coach, he has a responsibility based upon the verbal contract that we made with one another. He gave me his bond, I gave him my bond. So the exchange of bond by word is actually honored by both parties in the relationship. What does that really mean? We now have a responsibility to one another. So when he said, "Hey, coach, I want to become vegan," let's just say the minute he tells me that, as a friend, I now have my marching orders for him. So when I see him eating this big old juicy cheeseburger, like, hey man, I thought you said you wanted to go vegan. Well, see, what had happened was,
It's a soy burger.
yeah, it's an
Soy burger.
impossible worker.
Yeah.
So it's just stuff like that. That's the beauty of relationship, because sometimes we don't have that with somebody else, but we act like we do. When we start like trying to correct people that we don't have a relationship with, like you're
Mm.
somewhat out of order. They never gave you permission to do that. So now, and I know I'm kind of going a little far, but this is that significant, because this is where the communication like creates barriers. If, and I mean, I'm gonna use this as an example. We both own houses, so if somebody comes on my yard, now I have an obligation to go outside and say something. You're
Hmm.
on my property, right? Well, it's kind of like relationship, because my first order of business is to police up me. I police up me so I can be more suited for the neighborhood. Now, after I police up my yard, so forth and so on, I look across the street like, hey, you all right over there? You good? Your grass getting a little high. Do you need me to come and cut it for you? Because that's not like you. I've been observing you. I know how you do business. We've been friendly with one another. So I'm offering my services to my friend, because that's what friends do. Well, the dude around the corner and down the street, I may not necessarily offer my services, but I can go and check on him to make sure he's all right. That is a friendly act, but we're not in relationship like that. But just by me checking on him, that may open the door for that relationship to exist. Now, I know I got a little long-winded, bro, and I apologize for that. But I think this
You
is an important thing when it comes down to honesty in communication and relationships.
you did, but when you went long winded, he didn't go long winded, but when you did long winded, um, you brought out a thought for me. You said something about people trying to correct people that they don't have a relationship with.
Mhm.
Now, let's be honest. There's a lot of church folk that be watching this show. Let's just be honest. Some church folk that watch this show on Tuesday, and some church folk that watch you on TikTok, and some church folk that watch us on Friday night.
Yes.
One of the things that I have learned in my days is that church folk, now this could be stereotypes, but this is how I've seen it. People in the church, they're always trying to correct somebody, right? Always like, the Bible says this, God says this is how you're supposed to be behaving. So, how does that work? And I'm just speaking to some of the church folk that may be listening. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm just making kind of light of it. But I have seen and heard all my entire life where people who are in the church are always very adamant about trying to change people, win souls, and try to make corrections in people's lives. So you said something about people out there trying to correct people that they don't have relationships with. So how does that work in balancing that for some of these church folk or people who genuinely want to help somebody or genuinely is concerned in trying to correct somebody? So
Be
how does that work?
be more relational. That way, they can open up to you and share what they're going through, so you can actually help them. Like it's just a change in perspective. That's all.
Mhm.
I understand, and I want to make sure it's not all church folk, right?
Yeah, not all church
Yeah, I
folk.
want to make sure I put that out there in
Yep.
the airways. It's not all church folk. I understand exactly what you're saying, and sometimes we are more instructional than we are relational. I was literally having this conversation to some degree the other day. We are supposed to instruct our children one thing, but when we go to church, we're supposed to be teaching something else.
Mm.
The thing that I instruct my children with, right, which is supposed to be the law, I teach them the law to train them up in the way that they should go. When we go to the church and we talk about the gospels, I'm teaching them about the goodness of Christ. So it's two totally different things. Well, if you go and you start talking about the goodness of Christ, I have to talk about what he did. And when you go back and look at what he did, he built relationships, and then people wanted to ask him for help. They revealed some of the things that they needed help with, and then he helped them. Then they followed him. So he looked at them. He had empathy for them, their situation. He helped them with something, and then they followed him because of his character. And so I think that's the thing that we've turned around. We're still trying to instruct children as adults. And I
Mm.
think a lot of times that's in error. Can we see some things that people are doing in life that can actually harm them and can be detrimental to them in the long run? Absolutely. But there's something I need to remember. It's their life to live. They have dominion over their life, not me. And so at the end of the day, that's why I talked about relationship the way I did. When we have that exchange of bonds, you and I, a verbal commitment to one another as friends, now you've given me permission and say, hey, we are accountable to one another as friends. So when I say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Yeah, man. Um, I noticed that you've been working too hard. You need to get some rest, bro. Like, man, just he don't take that offensive. He don't take that as instruction. He take that as me actually looking out for his well-being. This is why you hear me say I'm kind. I'm not nice. Because if your feelings are up front, you hear what I'm saying and you're taking offense to it. But if your feelings are in its proper location, you hear what I'm saying and you say, you know what? He really does care about my well being. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I say it.
I like that, man. I really like that one, man. I don't even want to move on, but we got to. Yeah, I want to sit right here for a little bit, but
It's a good place to
um,
sit.
yeah, definitely a great place to sit. And we talked about nonverbal communication, and we talked about culture a little bit too. But I want to kind of come back around to the cultural piece because, first of all, I think it's important to kind of give people an understanding of not necessarily definition of culture, but a kind of understanding because culture looks different. A lot of times you hear people talking, they say culture when they say, oh yeah, people like us, and they just say black people, where there are different types of black people. The culture in New York with black folk is different than the culture in Alabama with black folk. So even the culture that's in your job or in your house or in your community or city. So culture is very different. So I don't, when we go to this next question and we start talking about culture, I don't want to just focus and look at culture as being just a color or a race. I want to look at it as it could be so many different pockets, and we kind of determine our culture. Because my culture that's in one, the culture at church may not be the same culture of people that I have at work
Yep.
or that I have on my hobbies. So I'll start with this one. Um, so do cultural differences influence communication styles? I think so. And the reason why I think so is that different people from different cultures communicate in a different way. When we've mentioned before, Roland is from Michigan, so they will greet each other. They may say, "What up, doe?" Right? Where if you got somebody from North Carolina where I'm at, they might say, "Hey, y'all." You know what I'm saying? So they both are greetings. They're both a forms and ways of expressions of saying hello, but the way people express them is different, and the words and the verbiage that they use to express things are different. And I think that that's very important, especially when we come to differences in communication styles. Because let's be honest, a lot of us watching this show, whether you're in a chat at home, watching it on replay or whatever like this, you included, we got kids, right? And some of us have had teenagers, and they have a totally different culture of language that they use. So when they're saying, certain things like, oh, that's Riz, or you know what I mean, whatever words and stuff that they use, we may not understand them. And it can affect the way we communicate, and it can affect our relationship. So because there's a lot of stuff that when my sons was around here and they was in high school, they was like, man, that's a slap. And I'm like, they talking about like, or smack, I think it was one of them, but it was like the food was good. But that was the word that they used for it. So even in that culture, when it comes to Generation X or G or millennials and all these different ones, there's languages and different ways of expression inside of those small cultures. So it is very important. So to answer this question is absolutely yes.
I do not disagree. Um, just the short of it. I remember
Yeah.
talking to my son one day, man, and I heard him mention the word drip.
Mhm.
When I heard the word drip, I'm like, "What's dripping?" I
Yeah.
gotta go and
Yeah.
look fine.
Right. I see money, something dripping. I mean, I got
Right,
called a plumber.
exactly. He's like, no, Dad, I'm talking drip, like how my clothes are. Wait,
Yeah.
what? Yeah, it's called drip. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like we got to recreate lingo in our head for the sake of
Hmm.
communication with them. But I think it's fun. I enjoy
Yeah.
it.
I
And
do
I
too.
think that's the posture that we need to embrace when it comes to different cultures. Like, I think one of the most immature things that I've ever done in my life is to go to a foreign country and get mad at them because they didn't speak my language.
Yeah, I did that before when I first
Yeah,
went to
yeah,
Korea.
yeah. And same,
Initially,
same, same.
initially, yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm
same,
like,
same.
hold up, bro, you in their country. Like,
And and I want to kind of make clear of that because we're around military installation. So in my mind, I'm thinking they speak our language. No, we're in
yeah.
their country, right? We should try to speak their language. Well, I think that's the thing we kind of mess up all the time. We see different cultures, but yet we want the culture to submit to our way of
Mm,
living and existing. Even here, you got to realize we were raised to understand that this country is a melting pot of people. So you have many different cultures here. So I think for us, because in that particular mindset, what we have to do is become curious about your culture, even though we're in a melting pot society. So whoever you are, whatever you are, if me as a leader, if I ask questions with the intent on learning and help them understand, like I really want to learn. I want to learn what you guys do on the holidays. I want to understand that when I'm talking to Arabs, Arabs are very, I mean, they eat up space. They get really close and they talk, and you listen to them talk. It sounds really aggressive, right? Um, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's their culture. But I may take offense to it because we'd be like, "Hey, back, give me 50 feet." You know what I'm saying? That's
mm-hmm.
our culture. So you have to find a way to deal with the anxieties that you may possess from dealing with other cultures. My anxiety is not your responsibility. Let me say that part again. My anxiety is not your responsibility. So when I push my anxiety onto you and make you subject to it, what I am telling you is that I want you to denounce your culture for my benefit. That's
Mm-hmm.
unfair to you. That shit, I am literally showing you in real time that I want you to be more concerned about who I am as opposed to me being concerned about who you are at all. So this culture thing is huge because we really want to look at certain things and we really want to say, well, you know, we're diverse in culture. Sure. Okay, I got that. We believe in equality. Do we really? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because just based upon what I just said, that creates an unequal situation. I don't want you to be my peer because I'm not willing to accept your culture for face value, but I want you to accept my culture because I want you to make me feel comfortable. How is that equality? It's not. Well, inclusion, again, I am including all cultures because I want different perspective. I not only want different perspectives, I want a multicultural perspective. But do I really give your perspective the same weight that I give a culture that I'm familiar with or my own culture? You see what I'm saying? Or so we got to really do a real deep self-assessment of where we are when it comes down to cultural diversity. If we really want to have good, honest relationships, I'm not necessarily mandated to have relationships with only people in my culture. How does that look in the workplace if I only communicate honestly with people who look like me? No, that's not relational. In fact, really, I am going to create a rift in the environment. What I need to do is embrace all cultures and create an environment where we all are curious about each other and learning from one another and putting forth the effort to show you that I value your perspective, I value your upbringing, and I also value your culture because I want to share in your culture. I want to do the things that you do so I can really learn what it's like to do those things. And then hopefully just in my curiosity, you become curious about mine as well.
Mm. Yeah. I've mentioned before on the show that, my wife is Native American, so their culture is some the first time I've ever been exposed to the Native American or the Navajo or the Dene people culture was through her. So I didn't know anything about it, and just a little communication. Um, it wasn't anything big. It's all in fun,
Yeah.
but it's just differences. when we first got together and stuff like this, and she would say sweater for every single outer layer of coat or
Mm-hmm.
jacket. So whether
Mm-hmm.
it was a Bill Cosby sweater, whether it was a hoodie, whether it was a jacket, whether it was a light coat, whether it was a sweatshirt, everything was called sweater.
Yeah.
And but they understood it. So they'll say, hey, go get me that sweater, but they know exactly what they're talking about. But she'll say, hey, babe, go get me that red sweater, right? So I'm thinking a red sweater that Bill Cosby gonna wear or something like that, right? So and then I look in the closet and it might be a red jacket, a red hoodie, and a red sweatshirt. So I'm looking for a sweater, and I don't see a sweater. So I'm just like, well, which one is it? And she's like, the sweater. So that was just something that we had to work through with cultural differences in
Right.
how they communicate.
Yeah.
Up there where all our grandparents siblings are called our great aunts and our great uncles. In their culture, they're called grandma and granddad,
Mm-hmm.
So, but now she has a couple of them. So now, just based off of the inflection sometimes in her tone or what the context of the conversation is about, when she say, oh yeah, grandma, I know exactly which grandma she's talking about,
Right.
even though there might be like 5 grandmas. So there was something that it was funny at first because I'm not used to hearing more than usually two people called grandma. And usually in those situations when there's two grandmas, usually parents identify them. You got grandma, this for grandma, and then you got grandma butter, and then you got grandma, whatever,
Yeah.
so grandma sugar, so you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like I had to get used to that, and we both had to be open to, you know, in those situations, who changes? Do I just accept and say, well, everything's gonna be a sweater, or do she diversify and say, you know what, I need to expand my whatchamacallit so I can be more clear? And I think it's a little bit of both. Over the years, sometimes she'll be more specific, but there are sometimes where she'll just say sweater.
Yeah.
But because we've been together for 10 years now, and I understand that sometimes she just may say sweater, and if I need more clarification, I would just ask.
Yeah. There you
So
go. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a sharing of both.
yep.
One of the things that I learned when I was in Korea, um, when I was like studying, how to speak Hangul, and I'm not saying that I was trying to study to be language proficient. I wanted to study to be able to communicate. And
Mhm.
so when you made the effort to say something in Hangul to a Korean, they would smile and then they would give you the right pronunciation. So
Mhm.
it's like they would meet you halfway just by virtue of you putting forth the effort to learn their language. It was almost like they were honored for you to do that. And
Yeah.
then instead of picking at you or something of that nature. That's how we all think. If I say it wrong, they're gonna pick.
Yeah.
No, nobody's checking for you like that, really. But if you just put forth the effort, not only would they read that, not only would they meet you halfway, but they would give you the proper pronunciation of the word, and they want you to recite it back to them, right? So I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, because on one side I felt like a total idiot because I felt like they should have been speaking English, and then on the other side I attempted to speak their language and they met me where I am and they embraced me just by putting forth the effort.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Man, I'm gonna transition into these. We got a couple of multiple choice questions, and then we got about 3 scenarios. So
Let's do
folks, appreciate y'all being here. I know we're gonna go over a little bit today, folks. So hang in there with us. I appreciate it. If you can, if not, then go back and watch the rest of it, at a later time. But
Put
you may
your
have
answer in the chat. I'm gonna take my
yeah,
time with answering this time. I'm sorry.
yes,
Put your
yes.
answer
Put
in
your
the
answer in
chat.
the chat. So let me see. Let me see if I can bring this up. Add this to the stage. All right, so here we go, folks. The first question of the day is this: what is a key component of active listening? Is it A, interrupting frequently, B, giving undivided attention, C, offering unsolicited advice, or D, avoiding eye contact.
We got to get like the Jeopardy timer, like.
And I was just thinking that.
That's all right. That's all right. So as everybody is putting their answer in the chat, um, interrupting frequently does not necessarily, it doesn't show that I'm listening at all. I am listening to respond, right? I got what I want to say, and I'm not necessarily listening to what you're saying. Offering unsolicited advice is very intrusive. You didn't ask me for advice. It's kind of like the whole going out and correcting people out in the street you don't know, right?
Yep.
And avoiding eye contact. That's like, somebody walk up behind me and call my name, and I'm trying to talk to them and type at the same time. It's very rude. So the answer is definitely B, given undivided attention.
Yeah. So, folks out there, if you are having a conversation with your significant other, you are constantly interrupting, constantly soliciting advice, and avoiding eye contact, you may not be actively listening. Just saying. It is what it is. Moving on to question number 2 of the evening. What is one way to bridge communication gaps caused by cultural differences? Is it A, ignoring differences, B, imposing your own communication style, C, seeking to understand the other person's perspective, or D, avoiding communication altogether?
This one is really good. I like this question because I want to identify what we normally do. What we normally do is B. We normally impose our own communication style, like I mentioned previously, going to Korea and expecting them to speak English. That was backwards. And if they don't speak English, we just try to avoid them altogether, just in case they
Mhm.
ask us stuff that we don't know. But for me, I would definitely say the answer is seeking to understand the other person's perspective. And in conjunction with that, sometimes you may need to ask questions for them to continue to express their perspective in such a way that you can understand.
There you got it, folks. I'm with you. The same thing. All right. Here's the first scenario. All right. The first scenario of the evening is this, folks. You and your spouse have been arguing frequently over minor issues. You feel like you're not being heard, and your spouse feels the same way. What's next, coach?
Um, Look at the bottom of the show notes, click in the notes, and schedule a one-on-one set. Now, I'm
There
just,
you go. There you go. Still a coaching session for
but
two.
I say that jokingly, but I'm serious.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to come and talk to a certified relationship coach, right? And it's a big difference because I do relationship assessments as well. Those relationship assessments can kind of help us to understand where some of our shortfalls and understandings exist in relationship. However, in this situation, I have a philosophy: my boundary, my yard, my work. So even in our relationship, my responsibility is to look at how I'm showing up in relationship for the other person. Again, remember, through the lens of appreciation, which means that I check me first. So when we're looking at these frequent arguments over minor issues, what role am I playing in this? Right? That's for each party to consider. What role am I playing in these arguments? Can I actually enter into these conversations with understanding or seeking to understand as opposed to imposing my thoughts on my partner? That could be an issue that we're dealing with. Maybe I'm a little too opinionated about what my or how my partner's doing, what they're doing, and maybe I just need to look at what the outcome is. Sometimes what we do is we say our partners are wrong because of the path that they're taking to get to the same outcome that we're getting to. Just because they take the wrong path don't necessarily make it wrong, right? And when I say the wrong path, is I'm referring to a path that I wouldn't take. Just because they're taking a path that you wouldn't take doesn't necessarily articulate the path to be wrong, as long as the outcome is the same. So be more concerned about the outcome and making sure that the outcome works to the good of the relationship in its entirety. So everybody check themselves. Everybody understand their own posture when it comes down to the minor issues. Everybody look at how they're showing up in a space of relationship and ask yourself, am I being too opinionated? Am I being too petty when it comes down to this? Pick and choose your battles. Everything is not necessarily worth running to the top of the hill and down on that hill for.
Man, I get everything that you are saying. And I want to raise you a little bit, right? So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at these two people have come to a roadblock or they've come to a stalemate, right? So there's no more giving. He is not feeling a certain way and she is not feeling a certain way, or they both are feeling a certain way. They both feel like they're not being heard, and it seems like they're at a stalemate. So I think if they really want the relationship to work, like I think they're at the point to where they need to get some help. Now, whatever that help looks like, there's layers or there's levels to it. You
Yep.
know, it may require a it may require a therapist, it may require a coach, it may require a family counselor, it may require that, it could require them to make some adjustments, it could require them to, maybe go on YouTube, maybe look at themselves in the mirror, kind of, like a lot of the things that you mentioned in your response, look inward, see what my problem is and what I am contributing to this issue. Why do I not feel heard? You know what I mean? Why does she not feel heard? Because it seems like to me they're just at a stalemate, and their communication is really the issue, is the communication.
Absolutely.
So that's at least what I think.
So
So
to your point, this is actually called a gridlock, right?
mm,
They're
gridlock.
right. And so the reason why I answered the way I answered is because you feel like you are not being heard.
Yep.
It's all about you,
Feelings.
right? And so when people start saying, I don't feel like I'm being heard, what they're saying is, sure, I may be articulating my perspective, but I don't think you're hearing me at the level of what I'm articulating. Well, in some cases, that may not necessarily be the other person's fault. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're not articulating yourself to such a degree that the other person can understand.
Yep.
That's why I say both boxers need to go back to their respective corners and they need to do some
Absolutely.
self work. When they do some self work, they're now at the position to where they can give the relationship a chance.
Yeah.
How am I showing up? What am I doing? How am I contributing to the problem? If I start there, then even in a lot of times we're like, well, they need to do it too. Worry about yourself. If I
Mm-hmm.
start there, then when I come back, even if that person is still stuck where they are, I can still realize to where, yeah, I get it. I don't have to own how you feel, but I can still be the one that actually creates the space for this relationship to progress forward. And maybe your behavior can influence the other person.
Yep. And they over here talking about feelings. Feelings gonna change. Every 5 minutes, feelings change. I mean,
Yeah,
we ain't basing our relationship off feelings.
can't.
Nope, you can't. Scenario number two. You notice that your friend often uses sarcasm, which sometimes hurts other people's feelings. Though they claim it's just their way of joking, how would you approach a conversation with this friend to improve their communication style and maintain healthy relationships?
Great question. I would start off by asking that friend a question. Hey, if you don't mind, I want to ask you a question. And I'm serious when I'm asking this question too. Like, I notice when you talk to people, you always use sarcasm, use a very sarcastic tone towards them. Why do you do that? If you don't mind me asking. Now, the term why can be intrusive. I'm just going to tell you that. So if
Yeah,
you're not skilled with doing that, then I don't
you're
recommend
gonna
doing
trigger somebody.
it. Right. But you also have to exercise a degree of emotional intelligence. So when you jump in the deep end with the why question, you need to be emotionally intelligent to regulate the conversation if they are triggered. So why do you do that? So now what that person has to do is look into themselves. Now the immediate practice response is that, hey man, I joke around. I joke around with everybody. If they can't take a joke, forget them. Right? Okay. But if you leave it there, they're good because that's their practice response. Go a step deeper. Yeah, but are you sarcastic with your mother? Are you sarcastic with your spouse? What about your kids? You know what I'm saying? If you was whatever church you affiliate, are you sarcastic with the preacher there? So now I'm changing the scenarios to kind of make them look at themselves. And in the midst of that, maybe, hopefully, they can come to the position say, you know what? I don't know. I think I might be sarcastic because I really don't want people to see me. And that's a lot of times what it is. That sarcasm is a way of, pushing keeping people at a distance, right? pushing them away, keeping them at a distance. I don't want them to learn me, because if they learn me, I'm fearful of what they might learn and they may not like me. So if they don't like me because of my words, that's one thing. If they stick with me in spite of my words, that's another thing. And then that person I can be in relationship for, be in relationship with. Well, help them to understand that pushing people away is the right answer. But dealing with your own insecurities is the right answer. Oh yeah, by the way, I go a step further. When you start using sarcasm with your spouse, you are actually setting the conditions for you guys to be divorced.
Mm, there you go. Um, so it says friend, right? So if it's my friend, I'm gonna be pretty upfront and direct. Coach, bro, you sarcastic to everybody, bro. That ain't you, bro. That ain't how we roll, or something like that. Not necessarily joking, but kind of being kind of laid back about the approach because that's my friend. And I'm not really worried about hurting their feelings or anything because that's my friend. But I would just be pretty direct. Bro, you are sarcastic. You hurting people's feelings. Like, is this is this the quality, or is this the type of man that you want to be? Is this is how you portray yourself? Is this, who you are? Like, why are you always responding to people in this type of way? So for me, I just create a very direct approach because that's my friend. And I should, if coach steps out of line, I would say something because we have that relationship. And I would hope that if he see me doing something, that he would challenge me and say, look, bro, last night on the show, you was very disrespectful to Gaddy. Bro, that's not what we do. So I wouldn't have a problem with that because I want to be a better version of myself. So if someone brings some constructive criticism my way, I want to hear it. So I think that sometimes I think that we kind of owe it to our friends, especially if we have a friend who is on a journey to be a better person. I think we owe it to make sure that we say something to them. And how you approach it is, it's a little different. It's up to the individual. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
Man, we
absolutely.
got one. You want to add something?
No, no, I was just going to say absolutely, and it's all
Oh,
about learning, knowing who you're talking to as well.
on
Because
your audience.
some people can handle that direct approach. Some
Yeah.
people struggle with it. So yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Coach can handle the direct approach, and I can handle the direct approach. So it makes for a lot of stuff easy. We don't have to walk around on eggshells talking about stuff. Like, you know, one show, Coach forgot and was late. And another show, I fell asleep. But it's part of life. Things just happen. Like, we don't care. Like, he was honest about it. He wasn't like, oh man, well, I had disappointment and he didn't give me no bunch of excuses, and I ain't give him no bunch of excuses. I don't want to hear it, bro. If
Mm-mm.
you late, just be like, bro, I'm just late, and that's it. I don't care. Same thing with me. Like, we don't. I think sometimes when you have these, I'm gonna tell you, at least for me, the relationships where I don't have to sugarcoat and coddle people are some of my best relationships.
Absolutely.
Man, at 48, I am tired of coddling grown folks. Tired of it. I don't know why I went down here, but we got one more question. We didn't keep these people over. So, folks, here's the last scenario. All right, so everybody got a family. So now you at a family gathering, and a heated debate arises over a sensitive topic. Tensions are high, and people are talking over each other. How would you use your communication skills to de-escalate the situation and promote a more constructive dialogue? Me, I'm letting fight. That's their business. No, I'm just playing.
You know what though? I'm not too completely upset with that response though.
Yeah.
Like, I
I
mean,
got
let's
a
be
family
honest.
reunion coming up in less than 2 months.
Yeah, I think I got to ask the question, like, is it my job to de-escalate the entirety of this debate?
Boom.
Because it's a lot of energy that's going on. And if I'm a leader and this is a work environment, that's totally different.
Yeah.
If it's a family gathering, mm, I don't think I'm. And again, if it's in my house, trust me, this is easy. This is an easy fix, right?
Yep.
Very easy fix.
Martin Lawrence.
Yeah, exactly. but
Get
well, that's one way, absolutely. But the other side to it is that we also got to recognize where this is taking place at. If it's just, out in the hotel environment or whatever that looks like I don't think it's it may not be my responsibility. Am I deemed as the family leader? Am I the patriarch of the family, or is my spouse the matriarch of the family? Things of that nature. If we're not, we can be a voice of reason, but at the end of the day, it would take way too much energy for one person to de-escalate the entire family. And I can tell you straight off, like the last family reunion we had in Atlanta was like 300 people. So yeah,
Whew.
I'm not trying to de-escalate
Yeah.
that. I'm not. That's not my fight to fight.
Yep. I'm with Coach on this one. I know the question at the end said use your how would you use your communication skills to de-escalate? I wouldn't. I think for me, I've used coaching skills, talking to people just randomly sometimes just to practice whatever like this. But the reality of it is, like Coach said, like there's something going on and those people got their mess going on over there. And where are we at? Are we at my house? Are we at an open public park? Are we at, a hotel? All of those matter. Like, who can say something to those people? Like, if a couple of people over there arguing, and I might not be the person who have a good relationship with these people to where I can even say anything to them. Like Coach said, a work place or a versus a family gathering is totally different. So that's what but with that being said, Coach, man, that's going to wrap up the show for today. We're not going to do actionable advice today. I think we said a lot of information when we went through these different scenarios and stuff like that, man. But before we do, I do want to just do a little bit of housekeeping, just let everybody know that you know where they can find other shows. So you can find us here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find us on the Empower in the Hearts Men podcast on Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And where else, Coach?
Some Saturday mornings at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and TikTok Sunday mornings on TikTok at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And generally, you can go and find me. It's easy to find the Mindset Coach, the underscore mindset underscore coach on TikTok, and you can't miss me because it's like an avatar with a straw hat on. Yeah, just follow us over there, and then yep, just follow us over there, and you'll see some of the conversations that we have on Sunday mornings as well, and they're very good conversations. So yeah.
That's good, man. I appreciate that. So we plugged everything, folks. We are about to get out of here again. You can find us here every Tuesday afternoon at 7 p.m. And with that saying, Coach, man, I enjoyed the show, man. You have a great evening yourself, man.
You as well, brother.
Peace out.